Okay, welcome. So, what's been the best thing about COVID for you so far? Well, you might not think of it as a best thing, but I think there's been a lot of good things that happen. Like for me personally, I've been home for nearly 12 months. Now, that's the longest time I've been home continuously for 25 years because I've spent so much time working overseas. And so it's probably pretty difficult for my wife to bear, but change is part of life. And because I've been home so much, I've seen a lot more of my children. I've got 4 kids, they're all grown up, have families, and I've seen them a lot more in the last 12 months. It's been wonderful. We've been having some wonderful discussions, especially around things like leadership, global leadership, world leadership, and all the vicissitudes and variations in that sphere over the last 12 months. And so I think that we've got to take account of all these things, and I think that educational leadership has to reflect some of the changes that have happened in global leadership, the positive changes anyway. And so what is the best thing about education? Well, the best thing about education, it seems to me, is teachers. And the best thing about teachers is that teachers are great learners. And that's been the best thing, I think, about COVID, is everyone's learned, everyone's changed, everyone's adapted, I'm, for an old guy like me, learning how to do this, learning how to make videos, learning how to cut and splice and trim and edit videos, learning how to do online teaching, learning how to set up chat rooms and set up breakout rooms and all the stuff that you have to do online teaching. That's been huge. And it wasn't something I would have ever done if I hadn't been required to, because I love the live in-person stuff so much. But I've had to, and so I have. And so that learning, that's the thing that's made COVID a wonderful experience for many people. And I think especially teachers, simply because teachers are such great learners. But I think we're looking for models. I think we're looking for models of leadership going forward. What is the 2021-2022 year going to look like? And I want to talk a little bit about 21st century skills and one of my favourite subjects, the All Blacks. So you probably don't know anything about them, so here's some learning for you. So I think the first thing we have to consider is when you're looking back at the global changes that have been brought about by COVID-19, what hasn't changed? Because I'll bet for most teachers, what hasn't changed is the what to teach, the subject matter, the subject content. I'll bet that administrators have not come to teachers and said, well, for this year we're going to take 20% out of the curriculum, we're going to take 30% out, because there's no way we can get across as much material, we're going to make the exam appropriate, and we're just going to teach less stuff. I'll bet that hasn't happened, has it? You're still expected as a teacher to get through exactly the same amount of content as you were able to do live and in person. So what to teach hasn't changed. And what has changed? Well, everything else, hasn't it? The how to teach, the when to teach, the where to teach, the with whom to teach, all these things have changed enormously. Now that teachers, because teachers are very adaptable and very able to change and go with the flow and create new resources, all the different methods of teaching have changed, haven't they? And so we've got online teaching, and we've got flipped classroom teaching, and we've got blended learning, and we've got still learning from books and learning from independently learning from resources at home, and we've got learning from peers, and we've got changes to assessment, and we've got changes to evaluation of success, and we've got changes in all aspects of teaching and learning. And I guess students are learning with other students or by themselves. I guess teachers are teaching with other teachers or by themselves. Students are learning at home in different rooms in the house, outdoors, indoors. Teachers are creating resources indoors and outdoors and from different places. And people are collaborating and working with other people and learning together. And I've been involved in numerous collaborative opportunities myself in the last 12 months. And it's wonderful to see teachers sharing materials with each other and helping each other and boosting each other, because these are difficult times, aren't they? And I think one of the most difficult things that we need to recognise is the emotional impact of COVID. Not just the emotional impact of being locked down and being isolated and wondering whether it's ever going to end and when it's going to end and when are we going to get back to normal. That's one side of it. The other side of it is essential loneliness and feeling isolated and feeling like you're up against the odds and feeling like you're having to summon up courage and determination, like as most people have not had much experience of in their life, I guess. And I guess what we're looking for is a model, certainly a model for educational leadership that embodies the abilities to generate courage, determination, and self-motivation. So it seems to me we're looking for an educational model that is based on the strength of character. Character is so important, and character is the foundation of all learning and all growth and all change. The stability of character and the expression of character has got to be a foundation part of any model of leadership. Also a model of succeeding against the odds. That is how it must feel in so many parts of the world right now, that you're really, really trying to succeed against the odds and so many things are working against you. Here in New Zealand we're relatively lucky because we appear to have COVID under control, but we're a very, very isolated island, so I guess that's easy for us to do. I just can't imagine how difficult it must be for people who are working in isolation, communicating with students in isolation, and just feeling like they're continually pushing that barrow uphill, succeeding against the odds. But when you do succeed against the odds, it's an amazing feeling, isn't it? So the emotional base, I think, is vitally important. And the last one, of course, is a model of rational leadership and decision making. There have been so many different models of leadership around the world in the last 12 months. Some of them appallingly bad. And the unfortunate thing about models of leadership that don't rely on rational decision making and creating evidence-based arguments is the cost in human lives. And there are thousands, in fact, there are hundreds of thousands of deaths around the world right now which didn't need to happen, which happened because of poor leadership. And I think that's unfortunate. I think it's a terrible, terrible thing. But I think we can learn from that. And if we can teach students how to create rational, evidence-based arguments in their own lives, then maybe we don't have to suffer the consequences of appalling leadership in the future. There's this great quote from Abraham Lincoln which says, "Nearly all men can stand adversity, but if you want to test a man's character, try giving him power." I don't know if it only applies to men or is focused on men, but certainly we've seen examples of that, haven't we? So what is this model? Well, the model I'm going to give you is the model of the All Blacks. Now, you probably don't know who the All Blacks are. You may have never watched rugby or not understand anything about rugby, but it is a global sport. It's about 123 million people who play rugby around the world. Countries like England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales and France and Italy and Australia, South Africa, New Zealand, Canada. There is Argentina, big rugby followings in all those countries, and smaller rugby followings in other countries. So it is a global sport. And it's been around for over 100 years. And the thing about the All Blacks is the All Blacks are the most successful team in history, and that they've got an overall record of about 77% in the last 112 years, a win record that is, which is pretty good going. But there's more to it than that, because what has been discovered is that rugby went professional in 1995 globally, and since 1995 the All Blacks have actually managed to maintain an 84.2% win record. Now this is extraordinary, and in fact it's been found that it is actually the best record of any sports team in any professional sport anywhere in the world. There's never been another team close to that record. And I guess my question is why? And I want to see if I can answer that question for you. But before I do, I'll give you a little taste of rugby, and we'll go to full screen. And
beautiful. Beauden Barrett saw a gap. Off he goes. Now can he link up? He's back to his own pace. Oh, gee whiz. That is magic. So here's the counter attack. Off goes McKenzie. Anything could happen here. Leonard Brown. And Beauden Barrett. He's gonna do it. Oh yeah.
Goggio, Taylor into space. Milner Scudder. Into the corner. Referee plays advantage. Penalty. TJ Perenara scores the try.
So that's probably enough to convince you how wonderful rugby is. If you're not convinced, and especially if you're a fan of American football, there's a really good example I've got here from American football, which is the Clemson Tigers. Because apparently in college football, which is huge at the moment, the Clemson Tigers are the top team and they're doing brilliantly. And their coach, Dabo Swinney, he said just the other day he was attributing the success, part of the success of the Clemson Tigers, to lessons he'd learnt from the All Blacks, and he says he applies the All Blacks principles every day. Interesting. So my question is, now look at the All Blacks. That, by the way, they were the team in black who were playing there. I didn't mention that before. I hope you picked that up. That why are they so good? You know, we have a very small population here in New Zealand. We only have 4 million people to draw from, one of the smaller rugby playing nations. And these guys are not bigger than anyone else. They're not stronger than anyone else. They're not faster than anyone else. They don't have better reflexes than anyone else, better eyesight, better balance, better hearing, better dexterity. They're not more skillful than anyone else. They're really just ordinary people. So why are they so good? Why has the All Blacks produced such an amazing record in world sport? Now, I think that's a question worth thinking about. And I think the answer has a lot to do with this guy here, who is Gilbert Enoka. Now, Gilbert Enoka, for the last 17 years, has been the All Blacks' mental coach. And to me, that's the thing that makes the All Blacks so great, is mental preparation. And Gilbert Enoka has, in the last 12 months or so, been writing about his experiences with the All Blacks. And he has 3 key principles that underpin all the work, the mental work he does with the All Blacks. And I think his model is a wonderful model that people can use personally for generating strength, determination, persistence, courage and character and good evidence-based decisions. But I think it's also a model that students could learn how to use. It's also a model that educational leaders could learn how to use. It's also a model that all teachers could use. And not just the PE teachers, because it's obviously a good model that works well in sport. So hopefully you haven't seen this before. It's something new for you. And I'm going to introduce you to Gilbert Enoka's model. And it's got 3 key points. Well, the first point is to stay in the moment. So what does this mean? Well, it's the essence of focus and concentration, isn't it? To stay in the moment. And I know personally from my own life, staying in the moment is absolutely vital to getting any serious work done. And it's so easy, I find myself. I'm one of those people who has like a constant voice going inside their head. I'm always having dialogues and chats with people inside my head. In fact, they're often arguments. And sometimes they can be arguments about things that haven't happened yet. So I'm looking into the future, thinking about something that might happen, a discussion I might have with someone, and it might produce an emotional reaction. I think he'll say this and then she'll say this and I'll say that, and I'll get emotional about that. And I'm actually dragging emotion out of the future into the present. Or something might trigger off something from my past, a conflict I had or a wonderful moment that I had. And that emotion will then transfer to the present. So I'm dragging emotion out of the past and out of the future. And all it does is upset my balance in the present and keep me from total focus and concentration. And what I've had to learn to do is a key principle of staying in the moment is just to say to myself, what is happening right here, right now? And I teach this to students all the time. I say that when I find I'm getting really distracted by other thoughts, let's say I might be out for a walk with my dog and there's all sorts of things going on in my head and conversations and stories and thoughts and words spinning around. And every now and then I take a pause and I say to myself, what can I see? And I focus on seeing. Exactly what can I see? And what can I hear? And I focus on hearing exactly everything. What can I hear? And what can I feel? What can I feel on my skin? And what can I feel on the inside? And just paying attention to your own senses in this moment brings you right back to the now. So I keep saying to students, well, what is happening right here, right now? And for you, watching me present this, what is happening for you right here, right now? Well, the only thing that's happening is you're listening to me. You may be wondering about what I'm going to say. You may be wondering where the argument came from. You may be following a logical track. But really, the only thing that's happening is you're sitting there listening to me. That's it. That's reality. And I think bringing ourselves back to reality is an absolutely key skill. And of course, this is what we call mindfulness, or what we call meditation. And mindfulness and meditation practices in schools have been found to have a profound effect on students' mental health. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips to see if I can reinforce this notion. See what you think of these clips. 1 second.
So nobody likes you, ugly ass. No one likes you.
Bitch ass like Ruby.
What is going on?
Connor's backpack.
Excuse me. Go sit in the back. Oh, I've given up.
We're that bad. They gotta bring a TV show about us.
I had a parent-teacher conference. The teachers were talking bad about me.
The principal said that if the teacher sent her to the office one more time, she had to change the school.
Sometimes I don't really listen.
Just a problem kid.
I really don't feel like my parents can understand me.
No, that's not. Yes, Mr. Allen.
I am here from Mindful Schools. We go into classrooms and teach something called mindfulness.
I was like, get out of here.
I don't know about the class.
People will like make fart noises and stuff.
Can I have everybody's eyes up here?
It's boring and it's stupid.
Keep your attention with me.
Gotta make stuff entertaining.
You will not be entertained 24 hours a day of your whole life.
Monica, go outside. I know you don't like expectations.
I do, but I don't like yours. For him, that he has a chance and opportunity to be somebody here.
I want to prove to them that I'm changing my life.
Repeat silently in your mind, I wish for myself to be happy.
So if you're interested in this, that's just a small piece out of the clip. You can go to YouTube and look up Room to Breathe. It's obviously a commercial product, and yet and still it is having a profound effect on some children. Obviously children who have a great difficulty focusing and bringing themselves to the moment, and it has produced profound changes in those children. I'll show you one more video clip, just of a simple technique that teachers can use to bring awareness and mindfulness into the classroom. It's called a mindful moment.
Hello. Hello.
I feel so much better when I clean them. Okay, voice is off in 1. Voice is off right now.
I don't know how they do it. They go from one class to a passing period, then back to another class with a completely different subject.
You go through the day without feeling how you feel. You just wake up, do your morning routine, go to school, come back home, and you don't stop, you know? And with mindfulness, you do stop.
Mindful body, feet are flat on the floor. Become aware of your body. So just notice your body. Mindful minute usually happens at the start of class. What I'm trying to do is give them a chance to arrive, is to give them a chance to make it all the way into the room with their bodies and their awareness. I'm going to turn off my voice and let you breathe for a couple of minutes without my voice.
She tells us to listen to our breathing and recognize the fact that you are breathing. Letting you stop for a minute, just reflect on yourself and how you feel.
When I was really stressing and worrying about stuff, when I took these mindful minutes, it's like, I'm gonna be fine. Like, I'm gonna get through this.
It's a very easy, very simple way to help kids arrive, to quiet down their nervous systems and help the brain turn on and get learning ready.
An excellent strategy, I think. And it's all about helping students to notice their own internal experience, to actually pull themselves back into the present. And because that is the essence of concentration and focus. And never more so than now in a remote learning environment where students have to generate that attention and focus themselves at home without anyone else prompting them or telling them to be quiet or keeping them under control. And that's a real big ask. to generate high levels of concentration and focus for extended period of time when you are at home by yourself. And so anything we can do to promote mindfulness and meditation, if you like that idea, I think is worthwhile. And it's all about mental health, isn't it? I mean, the mental health of teenagers in the world today makes some interesting reading. So here's a snapshot of mental health. This is pre-COVID, of course. In the USA from 2005 to 2017, 18 to 25-year-olds, serious psychological distress increased by 71%. Depression increased by 52%. Astonishing figures. Now, is that just an increase in reporting, or is it actually a real increase in mental distress? 11% of 12 to 17-year-olds suffer from depression. In Europe, 2018, 17 million 10 to 19-year-olds have mental, developmental and substance use disorders. Suicide is the leading cause of death amongst adolescents in low and middle income countries, and the second leading cause in high income countries in the European region. And suicide has got to me the ultimate end point of poor mental health, and it's such a tragic statistic. Here in New Zealand we have some of the highest teenage suicide rates in the world, and exacerbated by now the COVID experience, I think. China 2016, 5.5% of 14 to 35-year-olds suffer severe anxiety, 21.4% present as depressed. UK from 2004 to 2017, 5 to 15-year-olds. Emotional disorders including anxiety and depression increased by 49%. 5 to 19-year-olds, 8.1% report an emotional disorder. Now they're different statistics taken from different papers, from different sources. I haven't got a cumulative picture, but it does not look good. And all these statistics, I think, will be exacerbated by the COVID experience of students being at home alone by themselves with little support. And I think that all these statistics will only get worse unless we can help them, unless we can provide models, unless we can teach them skills, unless we can teach them how to generate resilience, generate courage and generate self-motivation as the basis for then learning all the things they need to do to achieve success academically. And a lot of this is in some way made worse, in some ways made better by the digital landscape. I'll just show you some quick slides about how the digital landscape has changed over the last few years. These are from January 2019, so they're already out of date, but they do show some interesting statistics. 7.6 billion people in the world, 4.3 billion who are internet users, and 3.2 billion who are mobile social media users. The growth is interesting. Population growth is only 1.1%, but internet growth is 9.1% and mobile social media growth is 10%. Daily time spent using the internet is of course going up over the years. Mobile share of total internet time is of course going up. Evolution of mobile data consumption, it's going up exponentially now. Social media, 42% of the world's population are active social media on mobile users. Social media users over time is going up. Time spent using social media is going up. Mobile social media users over time is going up. And this is probably the most interesting one. This is active user accounts. And of course, Facebook is leading the pack. This January 2019, about 2.4 billion people worldwide. Nearly half the world's population on one platform. Which then, of course, opens up those people to being manipulated by data, as we know from so many reports and so many documentaries and programs that we're seeing now about the way in which data can be manipulated. But I think one of the most important things to realize, as many people have said, is that social media is such a new phenomenon. And the connection of so many people on individual platforms is so new. And the way in which data is utilized by artificial intelligence to present them with things that they want to see is an experiment that we all seem to have enrolled in, most of us without our permission. Or do you actually read all those contracts before you click yes? Not very many people do. So Gilbert Enoka's second principle. First one was stay in the moment. Second one is avoid judgment. Now I think this is very, very relevant in the social media environment. So I think one of the key things is the challenge for teachers to help students is to help them avoid the toxic effect of social media comparison and judgment. So much social media is about presenting a snapshot of yourself, and it's always the best snapshot, isn't it? And looking at that snapshot of other people, that sample that other people put up, and how many people when they're playing around on social media get the feeling that they're the only one that's not having a good time, that they're the only one that's missing out. I think that terrible feeling of comparison is compounding all the distress and the isolation effects that children are having with COVID. Of course, being in a social media group that gives you lots of reinforcement and is very encouraging and very supportive is going to help. But it's very much a two-sided sword, isn't it? And which are the comments that you pay most attention to? If you are posting and getting replies, do you pay most attention to the comments which are supportive? That was great, that was really interesting, I'm really fascinated with that, tell me more about that. Or do you pay more attention to the critical ones, the ones that seek to chop you down and seek to point out where you're wrong? Certainly in my life, my experience, having run courses for hundreds of thousands of students and gained evaluations, written evaluations from all of them, certainly the positive evaluations are the ones that passed without much notice, but the negative ones are the ones that stand out. And even if it's 0.001%, it's still those are the ones that I tend to remember. And so that effect is exacerbated through social media. I think that what we've got to do is we've got to make sure we teach students some key social media skills around identity and security, how to create an identity that actually reflects who they are, and how to build security so that their data cannot be utilised by unscrupulous advertisers and promoters of different political ideologies. Two key things I think that all students need to realise about anything they post on social media. These, make sure that every student I ever teach gets these two key points straight away. First is everything that you post is there forever. You know, students still think that social media is a kind of a game and they throw things up and then they cut them out and they delete them, etc., etc. Deleting doesn't actually make a big difference to someone who's determined to find that data. It is still there. So consciously posting things that reflect your best character is going to be a good strategy. And the second thing is, if the service is free, then they are the product. All their data is being sold. This is one thing we have to get across to students, that if you just click on, yes, I accept the terms of service, then what you are doing is you are giving a corporation permission to use your data however they want. And be aware that Facebook is not a social media company. Facebook is an advertising company. All its revenue comes from advertising. And so what you are doing is you're giving someone permission to use your information to sell products. And you may like that. You may like the fact that you get products presented to you. But you may feel that they have a moral responsibility to actually have a little bit more of an ethical approach to data. So these are some of the things to get across to students. A really good person to read about some of the problems of social media is Gabor Mate. Wonderful. He's worked 25 years in addiction therapy. And he reports that addiction, that every single person he's ever seen as an addict in his clinic, he has run a clinic in Vancouver for many, many years. He said every single young person that comes to his clinic as an addict has an attachment disorder. And attachment is a fascinating thing. I don't have time to go into it now, but what we're talking about is emotional connection, especially emotional connection in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years of life. That's absolutely vital to give someone the strength to actually cope with difficulty. And resilience research shows exactly the same thing, that all students who have generated resilience to get themselves out of difficult situations, not just students, people in general who've generated resilience to get themselves out of difficult situations, they all have at least one person that they are emotionally attached to, that they could count on absolutely, totally, 100%. Just one. It only takes one. More than one is better, but it only takes one. Now, some interesting stuff about attachment and social media. Because according to Gabor Mate, and I think this has a lot of truth to it, 50 years ago, I can remember 50 years ago, probably most of you can't, but 50 years ago, young people's attachment was always vertical. What we were doing when I was young was always looking to the adult world for role models, for parents, grandparents, heroes, looking to older people for a behavioural compass. How do I act in this situation? We would always look to someone whose name was in a newspaper, or someone we had heard about in different ways, or some of the stories that were in the family, or stories you got from other people about adults who had overcome great difficulties and achieved great things, and what they would do in this situation. It was a vertical orientation. Now, most teenagers' orientation is horizontal, not vertical. So nowadays, most teenagers are looking to their peers and similar age influencers for role models. They're looking horizontally. They're using social media to connect with people of the same age and with influencers influencing people of their age to work out how to act in different situations, using peers as behavioural compasses. And I have to say, a 14-year-old boy using another 14-year-old boy as a model for how to behave in difficult situations is completely going down the wrong alley, a blind alley, and not using the appropriate models in most cases. And what adults are often finding is the addiction to devices, the idea of having a device in front of your face all the time, all day, all night, some kind of device, and connecting in a hyper-real way with someone on the other end of this device is leading to dissociation from adults. And dissociation from adults in some cases is not a bad thing, but what it leads to is an inability to look at adults as being appropriate role models, and to look at adults as being appropriate behavioural compasses. So of course there is a strength from connection with a like-minded group, but there is also the danger of the isolation of an echo chamber of comparison and judgments. You know, this is how AI works, to feed you back the things that you're interested in, locks you into an echo chamber where you're only getting opinions and ideas and information that reinforces your initial notion, which is a very dangerous little chamber to be locked into, especially if it involves a lot of comparison and judgment. So I think there are some key social media skills that we can teach all students. For example, how to identify their virtues and their values. Who are they as a person offline, and who do they want to be? The aspirations that they have as a real person connected to the real world. They've got to get very clear about that. And what do they see as their virtues? You know, what is their highest virtue? Is it compassion? Is it honesty? Is it courage? Is it determination? What is their highest virtue? And do they exemplify that in life and online? To identify the difference between reputation and character. You know, what is online is usually your reputation, which may or may not be similar to your character. And thinking about that, thinking about how could I represent myself online to actually exemplify my true character, so then I don't get any kind of a schism between my online and offline persona. How to create an online identity focused on individual strengths, goals, and exemplifying your own values. This is critically important. How to find positive, inspirational adults to follow. And I say adults very deliberately there. I think it's very important for children to start thinking about adults that they would like to follow. Now, I know there's so many terrible adult role models out there of people who lie consistently, and we feel like we're being lied to by the media, and we're being lied to by politicians, and we're being lied to by corporations, and it's very, very difficult. But within that, there are glorious and wonderful human beings out there who have done amazing things in every single field. So identifying the fields that you're interested in, and then finding adults who exemplify that and following them and connecting to them and finding out how they view the world and how they cope with difficulty. These have got to be key things for using social media for gaining inner strength. To make ethical choices about likes. Everything that you like is a record, and that record is your total profile online. So be very, very careful about likes, and make sure you're only liking the things that appeal to your sense of ethics. Set up and maintain strong relationships that exist both on and offline. Making sure that relationships are not just limited to the phone, that relationships are actually something that you have in person. You know, it was 50 years ago or so, Mehrabian showed that 7% of a message is in the words. The rest of a message is in the tone and in the body language. And body language is something that does not come across on a phone. And so when you're actually communicating with someone in person, I think it was 85% was body and 7% was the words, and the 8% was the tone. And so 85% of a message is actually conveyed in the body, and that's what you don't get online. That's what you're not getting from me. I mean, you get a little bit of the eye movement, you get a little bit from the hand movement, you get a little bit from the face, but you get very, very little in terms of the persona. And so that's what you get live, and live relationships. You know, you cannot fall in love with an image. You can only fall in love with a human being in personal, physical connection. And the last one is to have regular, deliberate digital holidays. You know, how many of us are prepared to put their phone away and off for 24 hours? That's a challenge, isn't it? It's a huge challenge. What about all devices? Imagine if you had 1 day per week where you had no devices. That means no computer, no phone, no tablet, no laptop, no television set. None of those things at all for 24 hours. How many people have done that any time in the last 20 years? You know, it is an amazing thing. If you actually put the time into doing that, you suddenly discover that the real world, you know, I have this little slogan to myself, is reality is what happens when you switch your devices off. And that's when you can get back into this mindfulness practice, the practice of noticing, what can I see right now? What can I hear right now? What can I feel on my skin? And what do I feel on the inside right now? And be connected with the moment. And I think this is critically important for mental health. I think this is summed up well by this quote by John Wooden: be more concerned with your character than your reputation, because your character is what you really are, whilst your reputation is merely what others think you are. So far, going back to Gilbert Enoka, we've got number 1, stay in the moment, practice mindfulness, practice meditation, teach it to students, avoid judgment, teach students social media skills and help them avoid the critical toxic effects of social media judgment and comparison. And number 3 is control what you can control. Seems obvious, doesn't it? But really, we've got to think, what can we control? And what can students control? That's the critical point. If we go back to purpose for a minute, what is the purpose of any ATL or 21st Century Skills program? What is the purpose? It seems to me the purpose is to develop effective self-managed learners. And we do this by teaching all students a full curriculum of ATL or 21st Century Skills, a full curriculum: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creative thinking, media literacy, information literacy. All the skills need to be taught, every single processing and emotional skills as well. The affective skills, the character skills have to be in there as well. And secondly, by having students apply those skills in all their school subjects, so once they've learnt the skills, then they've got a really good processing technique they can use in their subjects themselves in order to achieve academic excellence. And by making the self-management of learning a goal of formative assessment. So it seems to me that if self-management, which is the critical skill for a COVID environment, isn't it? The ability to manage your own learning, the ability to set your own goals, manage your own time, generate motivation, do good research, get the work finished, create good presentations, report back, set up digital collaborations, work with others online. All these skills are all the skills of remote self-managed learning, and those have got to be the most important skills for this year and probably next year as well. But getting back to purpose, so the purpose, it seems to me, is to develop self-managed learners, and the essence of that is helping students to realise that they do actually have control over their own success. You know, if we look at it like this, at school, what do students actually have control over? Do they have control over what they're taught? Or when they're taught, or where they're taught, or who teaches them, or how they're taught, or who sets the tests, or who marks the tests? Of course not. They have no control over any of those things. And unfortunately, for some students, this can produce a feeling of helplessness, of learned helplessness. This is Martin Seligman's work from the late 70s. Really worth looking at is learned helplessness is not something that's going to contribute to good academic results, and the helpless student becomes passive. And I'll bet there are many students online who are feeling like that right now, and they're the ones that teachers are having to put maximum effort and connection into. Whereas if we can help students to realise that there are two factors that are in their control. The first is how much effort they put in. And as teachers, we're always trying to get students to put in more effort and apply themselves more. But the second thing is how they apply that effort. In other words, what strategies they use for things like managing their time and tasks, for self-motivation, overcoming procrastination, and generating concentration. These are all the affective or character skills that are absolutely vital. And we can teach students how to do all these things. There are good strategies that they can try out and learn that they can use to generate self-motivation when they need it. How to develop good digital collaborations with other students, how to set up study groups that are supportive, how to set up the meeting protocols and the check-in protocols and the platforms for putting good resources that other students can share, and a way of identifying the strengths of different team members and utilising those strengths in groups, online groups, vital skills. Researching, verifying, validating information, that's got to be the core of inquiry learning, doesn't it? There's so much disinformation out there, so how to find information in different sources, how to check its validity, its credibility, how to verify, compare, contrast, validate, verify, and also recognise perspective and bias, and IP rights and referencing and creating bibliographies. It's all a part of good quality research skills. How to make good quality summary notes from text, from written material, but also from videos and podcasts. This is a key skill. And how to create good evidence-based arguments. This is once again a key skill. And there are many more, of course. Those are just some I've pulled out as being particularly important for self-managed remote learning. So the point being that if we can show students that they have control in these areas, then they get the feeling that it is possible to improve their success. And when they improve some of those skills and their academic success goes up, well then the game is over. They've proved to themselves that all they've got to do is improve their ATL skills, and it becomes self-reinforcing. And so they will go back and keep on improving their ATL or 21st century skills because of the payoff in improvement in academic results. So to me, any ATL or 21st century skills program, the aim is simply about focusing students on factors to improve success that are in their control, with the aim of developing successful self-managed learners. That to me is the key. Okay then, so just to sum up, what I think all schools worldwide need to focus on as a top priority for the 2021 to 2022 school year is helping students to develop all the skills they need to become effective self-managed remote learners. And these are the skills that I have picked out as being the most important skills to achieve that goal. And they're all pretty straightforward. I've gone through most of them already. Time and task management, self-motivation, setting up the study environment, setting up their home environment so that it works well for them and acts like a remote classroom. Forming study groups and digital collaborations to work really well with other students. Writing goals, setting goals, but not just writing goals, achieving goals, putting in place a process to achieve goals. Self-assessment, like self and peer assessment has got to be so much more important in a remote environment than it ever has been before. Effective searching and researching, summarising key points and developing evidence-based arguments. And of course, for teachers, I don't know what your situation is. If you do have students at school, then the best things you can do is to help them learn the skills of self-management while they are at school, so they can cope well in any remote learning situations they have to be in the future. So setting up opportunities for students to practice the skills of self-management has got to be vital. So how and where do they learn these skills? Well, what I want to show you now is Lalatat. This is a new platform that I have been involved in developing in the last 12 months. Lalatat stands for Learning About Learning and Thinking About Thinking. That is, you can find it at lalatat.com. This is what the home website looks like. If you go there, you'll discover that what we're putting on as a promotion right now is absolutely free access for all teachers and all schools to what I'm calling the Remote Learning Portal. Now, this is a portal of exercises for students to do to learn all the skills I've been talking about so far. And what you'll find there, this is absolutely free for all schools, all students worldwide. You'll get exercises in all those skills I just outlined. You'll also get access to a 1-hour video that I've made on how to design and implement your own remote learning skills program at your school. It's got lots of exercises for teachers to do. You could use it for professional development. The exercises themselves take 2 to 3 hours to do, so the video can be used for several sessions of PD, and at the end of which you will have in place all the parameters needed for your own effective remote learning skills program at your school. You'll also get invitations to regular meetups that's with other teachers to share information and share resources, and you'll get spreadsheets to enable you to complete the work. So let me just show you what the portal looks like. If you go to lalatat.com, you'll get invited, you'll send your email address, and you'll get access to this portal here. The portal contains exercises in all the key categories of skills necessary for remote self-managed learning. You see the category headings down here. Within each category, there are what we call strands. And within each strand, there are many exercises. These exercises are appropriate for students to do remotely, or for students to do in class, or for teachers to do for themselves, or for teachers to build into classroom lessons. Let me show you a couple of these. We'll start with time and task management. This is an exercise which relies on the matrix ideas of Eisenhower and Stephen Covey to help students and teachers, in fact anyone, to organize their time and tasks. It starts off with a mastery statement. It has a paragraph or two there explaining about time as a limited resource. It then asks students to fill in the chores and tasks and immediate goals for their next week. I've already filled these in like an average student. When the students have filled in all their tasks for the next week, those tasks are automatically transferred down into this next table, and the student is asked to decide for each task if it is important or not important, and if it is urgent or not urgent. Important being more significant for themselves than anyone else, urgent being more significant for someone else rather than themselves. Having done that analysis there, those tasks are then automatically transferred down into this matrix and put into one of those 4 quadrants. I won't go into the details now, but the analysis down here shows where the critical places are for tasks in order to relieve pressure and stress on students. And so the last part of this exercise is showing students how to reduce pressure on themselves by taking strategic action. And so they come up with explanations and decisions here, what I could do to manage each task better to make sure the stressful ones don't happen again. So that's one particular set of exercises under organisation. We'll have a look at a couple of others. Under character skills, I have one here on self-motivation. Self-motivation starts off again with a mastery statement and then asks questions about success at school and asks students to, or tries to help students to understand the difference between intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. It then asks students to investigate video clips of other people talking about self-motivation and describe any key strategies they get from other people, to share those with other students. It looks at the difference between causality and attribution, particularly around causes of failure. There's an exercise on self-talk and managing self-talk. Notice self-sabotage, and it gives students lots of things to focus on to help them get over any negative self-talk and self-sabotage. There's lots of parts to that. It talks about visualization, also talks about positive thinking. A statement here, positive thinking doesn't mean fooling yourself. It doesn't mean being unrealistic. It just means adjusting your perspective so that you build a habit of focusing on the positive aspects of your life and the life around you. And it asks students to list successes and list positive features of their daily life, things they are grateful for. Talks about committing random acts of spontaneous kindness and challenge and goal setting. I won't go through any more, but you can see these are exercises that students can do. They're all fully interactive. Students can fill in whatever data they want in each line. And so that's some character skills, and then we've got metacognitive skills, got language skills, creating summary notes from text and from presentation. We have media skills about creating presentations and looking at different media options and choices. Group skills, how to set up good functioning digital groups. Research skills, effective searching, looking at sources for bias, a whole strand on IP rights, academic honesty and referencing, and I'll just show you one more, developing evidence-based arguments. A mastery statement, and it asks students to analyse a news argument. Find a news argument, look at the claims for and against, look at the evidence for each, look whether the claim is justified, and if it is justified, how, if not, why not. Look at the author's conclusion, how well was the conclusion justified by the argument, and what were the flaws in the argument. These little plus and minuses buttons here enable students to expand all the tables to suit the nature of what they're investigating. It asks them to do the same analysis around a medical argument, around their own argument. And the last exercise I call Pigs Might Fly, which is a kind of reverse argument exercise where if you take the conclusion that pigs might fly, what would have to be true in order for this to be true? And following a logic trail, 3 different logic trails, 1 which has been done and 2 which students have to do for themselves. So the point is that there are exercises there for students and for teachers to do that if they did all of them, they would have all the skills necessary to become a brilliant, effective, remote, self-managed learner. Okay, so that's Lalatat. I hope you enjoy it. Go to lalatat.com. So I guess to sum up the key points of this presentation, I think for the 2021-22 year it's going to be vitally important for teachers to receive comprehensive training in how to design and develop good, engaging online lessons. You may well have already received that training. That's wonderful if you have, but if not, then it should be a part of ongoing professional development for all teachers, it seems to me. Teachers have to be familiar with every website that teaches their material, and schools have to be prepared to pay for subscriptions to some of the subscription sites. And of course, students need full training in all the ATL or 21st century skills necessary for them to become effective remote online learners. So those are the 3 key points from Gilbert Enoka. Stay in the moment, be mindful, avoid judgment, learn some social media skills, and control what you can control, which are all the 21st century skills I've outlined. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you haven't had enough rugby yet, I'll show you a little bit more, and that'll be it for today. Thank you.
To make some tackles, Jordy Barrett. Taylor, quick hands to Ben Smith again. And he's got Aaron Smith lined up, and the little halfback's in. To make some
Oops, of course I could watch that all day. So I'm available for Q&A for the next 5 to 10 minutes, so please join in. Thank you and goodbye.